Good day and good evening. Thank you for standing by. Welcome to Tencent Holdings Limited 2022 fourth quarter and annual results announcement webinar. I'm Wendy Huang from Tencent IR team. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. After management's presentation, there will be a question and answer session. For participants who dial in by phone, if you wish to ask a question, please press 5 on your telephone to raise your hand. If you are accessing from the Tencent Meeting or Zoom Meeting application, please click the raise hand button at the bottom left. And please be advised that today's webinar is being recorded. Before we start the presentation, we would like to remind you that it includes forward-looking statements, which are underlined by a number of risks and uncertainties, and may not be realized in the future for various reasons. Information about general market conditions is coming from a variety of sources outside of Tencent. This presentation also contains some unaudited non-IFRS financial measures that should be considered in addition to, but not as a substitute for, measures of the group's financial performance held in accordance with IFRS. For a detailed discussion of risk factors and non-IFRS measures, please refer to our disclosure documents on the IR section of our website. Now let me introduce the management team on the webinar tonight. Our Chairman and CEO, Pony Ma, will kick off with a short overview. President Martin Lau will discuss strategy review. Chief Strategy Officer James Mitchell will provide a business review. Chief Financial Officer John Lo will conclude with financial discussion before we open the floor for questions. I will now pass it to Pony.
Great, thank you, Wendy. Good evening. Thank you everyone for joining us. During 2022, we increased our business efficiency, sharpening our focus on core activities, and developed new services and revenue lines, positioning us for a sustainable growth model in the future. A few notable achievements. In Weixin, our video account became a leading short-form video and live streaming platform in China, while mini programs achieved strong growth in both DAU and GMV, contributing to the real economics development. For games, domestically, we significantly reduced our miners' time spent while sustaining our market leadership. Internationally, we elevate Valorant as a top global franchise and published 2 out of the top 3 new mobile games of the year. In advertising, we returned to positive revenue growth in the fourth quarter through the launch of video account in-feed ad, enhance the transaction-driven capability of our ad inventory, and improve our machine learning infrastructure. For cloud, our upgrade strategy resulted in initially lower revenue but improved gross profit margin. We assisted that the digital transformation of non-internet industries and public services. During the year, we returned increased capital to our shareholders through distribution in kind, share repurchase, and cash dividend. We also made significant progress in our drive to create sustainable social value. For example, we announced our commitment to carbon neutrality by 2030. Our digital charity platform raised donations for over 25,000 projects and engaged more than 100 million users. In support of basic research, we pledged 10 billion RMB over the next 10 years to establish the new cornerstone investigator program. On the governance front, we welcomed Professor Zhang to join the Tencent board last August. Martin will rotate off the board at the upcoming AGM while fully dedicated as our exceptional president. This adjustment will more clearly separate board from executive responsibilities, increase the proportion of independent directors, and increase the proportion of female directors. Now let me go through the headline financial numbers for the quarter. During the fourth quarter, total revenue was 145 billion RMB, up 0.5% year-on-year and 3% quarter-on-quarter. Gross profit was 62 billion RMB, up 7% year-on-year and broadly flat quarter-on-quarter. Non-IFRS operating profit was 39 billion RMB, up 19% quarter-on-quarter year-on-year or down 4% quarter-on-quarter. Non-IFRS net profit attributable to equity holders was 30 billion RMB, up 19% year-on-year or down 8% quarter-on-quarter. Now I will hand over to Martin for the strategy review.
Good evening and good morning to everybody, and thank you, Tony, for the kind words earlier. I look forward to sustaining and indeed enhancing my dedication as Tencent's president in the years ahead. With that, I will share some of our perspectives on our strategy for the future, which we believe is actually very exciting. And thank you, Tony, for the kind words earlier. In the year of 2022, we aligned our businesses with the new industry paradigm while continuing to invest and pursue value creation opportunities in strategic areas. Today, I'm pleased to tell you that our consistent efforts have yielded encouraging results, and we have successfully repositioned ourselves for sustainable and high-quality growth. Let's take a look at our financial performance, which has started to improve since mid-2022, particularly for the fourth quarter. Our revenue stabilized on a year-on-year basis following the decline in the last two quarters. We achieved year-on-year improvements in gross margins across all business segments. Non-IFRS operating profits and net profits both increased 19% year-on-year compared to low base in the same period last year. The improved financial results reflect our proactive initiatives coupled with an improved macro environment. First, we executed efficiency initiatives to improve margins and promote earnings quality. These included reducing costs and sharpening business focus. Second, we made significant progress in developing new high-quality and high-potential revenue streams, such as Video Accounts in feed ads and international games. Third, for the macro environment, we're encouraged to see positive signals related to post-COVID recovery and regulatory normalization. Looking forward, we're confident of our future growth potential underpinned by multiple drivers. First, we see expanding opportunities in advertising, fintech services, and games, along with continued recovery in macro environment. Second, we're still in the early stage of monetizing Video Accounts, and we're nurturing additional revenue streams such as live-streamed e-commerce. Third, we'll continue to focus on operational efficiency and remain disciplined in resource allocation. Fourth, we have been leveraging our long-standing expertise in developing and applying AI technologies as a growth multiplier. The recent industry breakthroughs in foundation models and consequently in generative AI applications present exciting opportunities for us. In the next few slides, I will discuss more about some of these drivers. Let's start with advertising. While it's still early days for macro recovery in China, I'm pleased that our ad revenue returned to double-digit growth in the fourth quarter, albeit comparing to an easy base period last year. We registered positive growth in the fourth quarter, even if we take out the new contribution from Video Accounts in feed ads. To reinforce our growth potential as macro environment improves in 2023, we have been expanding ad inventories as well as improving our capabilities to enhance conversion for advertisers. For new ad inventories, we see strong market demand for Video Accounts in feed ads. We're making very good progress in ramping up revenue on the back of rapid user engagement growth and high advertisers' demand. Additionally, we're increasing ad load of Weixin official accounts and enhancing access to quality inventories in mobile ad network. To drive conversion for advertisers, we have been upgrading our transactional capabilities via innovative ad formats, CRM tools for merchants, and shopping tools for users. The portion of Weixin ad revenue generated from click-to-purchase and click-to-message ads has been increasing and exceeded 1/3 in the fourth quarter. This positive trend demonstrates that advertisers increasingly recognize our differentiated capabilities in driving transactions, positioning us well for consumption recovery. In addition, we have been investing in our new machine learning infrastructure. We've rolled out a new ad targeting engine, enabling us to enhance conversion rates and help improve ROI for advertisers, especially for long-tail advertisers. Furthermore, the new infrastructure allows us to achieve greater processing efficiency by increasing training speed and lowering per unit training costs. Turning to fintech services, despite the temporary COVID impact during the fourth quarter, we expect our commercial payment business will benefit from consumption recovery in China. This is evidenced by the strong rebound in our total payment volume growth since the beginning of 2023. On the top of macro recovery, our commercial payment business have been structurally benefiting from synergies with mini programs. As a leading transaction platform in China with several trillion RMB of GMV in 2022, mini programs enables online plus offline solutions for merchants to reduce transaction friction and drive repeated sales. As a result, the proportion of commercial payment volume contributed by mini programs has been increasing over time and has reached high teens % level. In terms of new business development, we're well positioned to capture further opportunities in the fintech sector as the regulatory environment in China normalizes. For wealth management, we're expanding our user base through investor education, better services, and a broadening product line. For consumer loans and online insurance services, we're exploring new opportunities through close cooperation with licensed financial institutions under a new regulatory framework. For games, we are now gearing up for global expansion. In domestic market, we navigated through industry challenges during 2022 and are now well positioned for reigniting growth. Our key franchises have demonstrated resilience and longevity. For example, in January 2023, Honor of Kings had its best ever Chinese New Year period in terms of gross receipts, thanks to very successful launch of new content, top quality outfit, as well as targeted offerings for players. In addition, Dungeon & Fighter delivered its strongest fourth quarter performance over the past 3 years, leveraging the success of game mechanics evolution to attract returning users. Furthermore, we're benefiting from normalization of Banhao approval, which enables us to strengthen our game releases for 2023 and beyond. Under the new industry norm, we're sharpening our focus on launching new games. In addition to titles in high potential genres such as Undawn, we'll bring to the market new games combining popular IPs with our expertise in genres such as shooter and auto chess. Meanwhile, we'll publish leading international franchises such as Valorant and Lost Ark. In international markets, we have made strong progress in reinforcing our growth potential over the medium and long term. Our international games revenue for the fourth quarter increased to $2 billion, representing 1/3 of our games revenue. We've expanded our top franchise portfolio as Valorant goes from strength to strength with record users and revenue, and as Miniclip acquired top casual game franchise, Subway Surfers. Our emerging studios have achieved initial success in their new title launches, including V-Rising by Stunlock and Dark Tide by Fatshark. For the next few years, we're building a strong pipeline to tap into multiple opportunities in the international markets. Notably, we're expanding our regional IPs into new platforms, markets, and genres, such as Valorant on mobile and Honor of Kings in international markets. We're also supporting our emerging studios to launch bigger titles with greater longevity, as well as bringing more highly acclaimed PC and console IPs to mobile devices. Turning to Video Accounts, which is a key strategic growth driver. Video Accounts continue to experience strong user engagement growth. In the fourth quarter, its total time spent reached 1.2 times that of moments. The number of videos with over 100,000 likes more than doubled year-on-year. We're now building on our user engagement in short-form videos to expand into live streaming services. Over the past year, we achieved rapid growth in live streaming services as we enriched our content and drove traffic for creators. In addition, we're gaining user mindshare in live events. For example, over 190 million viewers watched the 2023 CCTV Spring Festival Gala via live streaming on video accounts. To keep up with the growing demand for merchants to conduct transactions, we're enhancing our e-commerce capabilities. One of these improvements is the launch of Video Accounts Shop, which offers seamless shopping experience to users. We're broadening monetization opportunities in video accounts, capitalizing on the rapid expansion in short-form videos and live streaming. While live streaming tipping revenue experienced strong growth in 2022, in-feeds ad revenue are ramping up rapidly and exceeded 1 billion RMB in the fourth quarter. Furthermore, we're building infrastructure for live streaming e-commerce to promote GMV growth. Since the January of 2023, we have started charging commissions to develop a new revenue stream. To conclude the strategy section, I would like to share with you our perspective on artificial intelligence, specifically the implications of foundation models for Tencent. The most important takeaway is that we expect AI to be a growth multiplier for us going forward. We have a long-standing experience in developing and adopting AI technologies, which has already benefited many of our businesses, such as advertising, games, short-form videos, and cloud computing. Recent industry breakthroughs in foundation models and consequently in generative AI applications are very beneficial to us, as our core social and gaming businesses are user-to-user oriented and involve very premium content, which are hard to be disrupted by AI technology, but can stand the benefit of being enhanced. On the other hand, foundation models facilitate our introduction of user-to-machine services, such as digital assistant and search, which can become new growth areas for us. As for strategies, we have been developing our foundation model and plan to gradually roll out these models at the back end, while introducing front-end use cases across our full product range. We are leveraging AI technologies to enhance our product innovation, monetization, and operational efficiency. We believe that we have strengths across the entire AI value chain, because first, we have a broad range of use cases for AI via applications with deep user engagement, including Weixin, our leading game titles, our office productivity software, and our entertainment services. Second, with our long-term investment in machine learning, we have strong teams and deep expertise in technologies such as natural language processing and computer vision. Third, the breadth and depth of data accumulated in our businesses offer a strong foundation for our model training process. And fourth, Tencent Cloud is one of the leading cloud providers in China. The scale and sophistication of our infrastructure can support the growing demand for computing power from not only our in-house products, but also our clients' applications. Building on these competitive capabilities, we are rapidly advancing our proprietary foundation model, Hunyuan, which has strong capabilities in Chinese language processing. With that, I'll pass to James to talk about the business review.
Thank you, Martin. So for the fourth quarter of 2022, our total revenue was up 0.5% year-on-year. VAS represented 49% of our revenue, within which the social network subsegment was 20%, domestic games 19%, and international games 10%. A ratio of international games revenue to overall games revenue, which is seasonally higher in the fourth quarter, increased from 28% in the fourth quarter of 2021 to 33% in the fourth quarter of 2022. Online advertising was 17% of our revenue, and fintech and business services 33%. For value-added services, segment revenue was 70 billion renminbi, down 2% year-on-year. Social network revenue was also down 2% year-on-year to 29 billion renminbi. Revenue from music and game-related live streaming services decreased, while revenue from video accounts live streaming service increased, driven by more paying users as we enriched our content offering and enhanced recommendation efficiency. Our video subscription revenue increased year-on-year, driven by ARPU growth as we adjusted membership pricing. Video subscriptions decreased slightly due to content scheduling delays. In January 2023, we released the self-commissioned drama series Free Body, which became the highest-rated domestic science fiction series in the past 5 years, per the Douban review aggregator site. Music subscription revenue increased year-on-year. Paying users and ARPU grew as we offered additional membership privileges, such as improved sound quality and enhanced user engagement in music genres. Domestic games revenue was down 6% year-on-year to 28 billion renminbi, reflecting lower gross receipts in the prior quarters, which flowed through to lower revenue accruals during the fourth quarter. However, gross receipts in the fourth quarter increased year-on-year due to higher DAU and spending per paying user. International games revenue increased 5% year-on-year to 14 billion renminbi, or up 11% excluding currency movements and a true-up revenue adjustment made in the fourth quarter of 2021. Key franchises Valorant and League of Legends, as well as new launches Nikke and Darktide, contributed to the revenue growth. For Weixin, total user time spent has steadily increased through 2022, driven by growth in time spent for both chat and non-chat use cases. Among the non-chat use cases, the Moments content sharing feature, which accounted for the majority of Weixin's non-chat time spent in the fourth quarter of 2021, remains the China leader in the social category, with Moments time spent stable year-on-year in the fourth quarter of 2022. However, users have also diversified and expanded their non-chat activities within Weixin. User time spent in mini programs approximately doubled year-on-year in the fourth quarter, surpassing time spent in Moments, as more users activated mini programs more frequently, especially content and productivity programs. And user time spent in video accounts more than tripled year-on-year in the fourth quarter, also surpassing time spent in Moments. For QQ, we added Super QQ Show avatars and video chats to provide fun and lifelike interactive experiences. Utilizing motion capture technology, the avatars can mirror users' facial expressions, gestures in real time during video calls. Mini Worlds, the short-form video service within QQ, enriched its anime content and games content, and launched AI-powered video creation tools. DAU and time spent per user significantly increased year-on-year. Moving to domestic games, as Martin has already discussed, key games such as Honor of Kings and Dungeon & Fighter have performed well in recent months. In February, we launched Undawn to tap into the emerging survival open-world crafting genre. Featuring high-fidelity graphics and immersive experiences, Undawn ranks first by gross receipts among new mobile games released in China year to date. Looking at international games, League of Legends gross receipts increased year-on-year this quarter due to a Battle Pass and Creative Outfit series tied into the World Championship Finals. Valorant's MAU and gross receipts grew year-on-year as players responded to its new age of Best of 9 game mode. While PUBG Mobile's gross receipts declined year-on-year, the rate of decline improved notably versus prior quarters on an easier base effect and as innovative outfit designs appealed to players. Call of Duty Mobile celebrated its 3rd anniversary with World Cup-themed content, new Battle Royale play and top-tier outfits, contributing to increased gross receipts. Among new releases, Nikke was the first-place title internationally by gross receipts among all new mobile games released in 2022. We recently added a PC version of Nikke, contributing to increased gross receipts. Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, a co-op action shooter PC game developed by our subsidiary Fatshark, was ranked by Steam among Steam's top new releases of the year. Moving to online advertising, our advertising revenue was 25 billion renminbi in the fourth quarter, up 15% year-on-year. The resumption of year-on-year revenue growth was driven by demand for our video accounts, in-feed ads, and mini-program ads, upgraded performance for our mobile ad network, and an enhanced machine learning infrastructure, powering more effective matching of users and advertisers. By category, ad spend from e-commerce platforms, fast-moving consumer goods, and game advertisers increased notably year-on-year. Our social and other advertising revenue for the fourth quarter was 21 billion renminbi, up 17% year-on-year. We experienced substantial demand for video accounts ads, prompting us to release more inventory, and video accounts in-feed ads exceeded 1 billion renminbi in quarterly revenue. Mini programs ad revenue increased with higher adoption of rewarded video format. And our mobile ad network resumed year-on-year revenue growth due to improved conversion rates and increased adoption of the bidding mechanism. Our media advertising revenue for the fourth quarter was 3 billion RMB, up 4% year-on-year. Mini programs ad revenue increased. Looking at fintech and business services, segment revenue was 47 billion renminbi in the quarter, down 1% year-on-year, though up 5% quarter-on-quarter. Fintech services revenue grew slightly both year-on-year and quarter-on-quarter. Our average daily commercial payment volume declined quarter-on-quarter in the fourth quarter as COVID-19 outbreaks temporarily suppressed consumption activity, but has rebounded to a robust year-on-year growth rate quarter to date in the first quarter, benefiting from resumed consumption activity. For business services, revenue declined year-on-year while gross profit increased as we reduced loss-making activities, optimized costs, and focused on our self-developed platforms and service offerings. Within business services, we're actively helping automobile manufacturers such as NIO, BMW, and GAC Motor enhance their IT infrastructure and product offerings in areas such as smart cockpit solutions, digital maps, and data management. And now I'll pass to John for the financial review.
Thanks, James. For the fourth quarter of 2022, total revenue was 145 billion RMB, largely stable year-on-year. Gross profit was 61.9 billion RMB, up 7% year-on-year. Net other gains was 85.8 billion RMB, largely flat year-on-year. This was mainly due to a 106.6 billion RMB gain from business disposal of Meituan, partly offset by impairment provisions on certain investees. Operating profit was 116.8 billion RMB, up 6% year-on-year. Net finance costs were 3.7 billion RMB, up 96% year-on-year. Year-on-year change was due to foreign exchange losses incurred this quarter versus gains in the fourth quarter of 2021. Share of losses of associates and joint ventures was 1.6 billion RMB on a non-IFRS basis. Share of profit was 3.1 billion RMB versus share of losses of 0.8 billion RMB last year. This improvement reflects better profitability of certain domestic associates as a result of their cost optimization initiatives. Income tax expense increased by 18% year-on-year to 4.6 billion RMB in line with higher profit and increased withholding tax provision. IFRS net profit attributable to equity holders was 106.3 billion RMB, up 12% year-on-year. Diluted EPS was 10.977 RMB, up 12% year-on-year. Now I'll share our non-IFRS financial figures. For the fourth quarter, operating profit was 39.4 billion RMB, up 19% year-on-year. Net profit attributable to equity holders was 29.7 billion RMB, up 19% year-on-year. Diluted EPS was 3.042 RMB, up 19% year-on-year. Moving on to gross margins. For the fourth quarter, overall gross margin was 42.6%, up 2.5 percentage points year-on-year. By segment, gross margin for value-added services was 49.8%, up 1.1 percentage point year-on-year. Year-on-year margin increase was largely driven by a favorable shift in revenue mix. Gross margin for online advertising was 44.2%, up 1.5 percentage points year-on-year. The year-on-year margin was mostly due to strong demand for video accounts in ads, which led to a faster growth in revenue compared to costs. Gross margin for fintech and business services was 33.6%, up 6.5 percentage points year-on-year. The year-on-year margin improvement was driven by our cost rationalization and efficiency improvement, as well as lower crowd project deployment costs as we scale back loss-making activities. On operating expenses, selling and marketing expenses was 6.1 billion RMB, representing 4.2% of revenues. This reflects a decline of 47% year-on-year due to tightened spending on marketing activities across our organization. R&D expense was 15.9 billion RMB, up 14% year as we continue to invest in strategic areas in both domestic and international markets. G&A expenses excluding R&D was 11.4 billion RMB. The year-on-year increase was mainly driven by higher expenses incurred by some of our overseas subsidiaries. As a quarter end, we had approximately 108,000 employees, down 4% year-on-year or broadly stable quarter-on-quarter. Let's look at our operating and net margin ratios. For the fourth quarter, non-IFRS operating margin was 27.2%, up 4.2 percentage points year-on-year. Non-IFRS net margin was 21.1%, up 3.2 percentage points year-on-year. Let's discuss earnings per share and dividends. For 2022, IFRS basic EPS was 19.757 RMB, diluted EPS was 19.341 RMB. Non-IFRS basic EPS was 12.138 RMB, diluted EPS was 11.835 RMB. On the 16th of November 2022, we announced a special interim dividend in the form of distribution specie of Meituan shares. Subject to the shareholders' approval at the upcoming 2023 AGM, we are proposing an annual dividend of Hong Kong dollars 2.4 per share, up 50% year-on-year. Our annual dividend will be payable to shareholders on the 5th of June 2023. To conclude, I will highlight some key cash flow and balance sheet metrics. For quarter four, total CapEx was 5.7 billion RMB, down 52% year-on-year. Within total CapEx, operating CapEx was 1.9 billion RMB, down 76% year-on-year or up 80% quarter-on-quarter. The year-on-year decline reflects our efforts to assess and tighten our spending. The sequential increase was mainly driven by higher CapEx on servers in the fourth quarter. Non-operating CapEx rose by 4% year-on-year and 184% Q-on-Q to 3.8 billion RMB. The sequential increase was due to additional expenditure on office buildings. Free cash flow for the quarter was 23.1 billion RMB, down 31% year-on-year. The year-on-year decline was mostly due to lower operating cash flow, partly compensated by decreased payment for CapEx and media content due to cost optimization. Net debt position was 14.8 billion RMB compared to 27.3 billion RMB in the previous quarter. The sequential improvement in our net debt position was due to a free cash flow generation, partly offset by payments for the repurchase of Tencent shares. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We shall now open the floor for questions. If you are dialing in by phone, please press 5 to raise question, then press 6 to unmute yourself. If you are accessing from the Tencent Meeting or Google Meeting application, please click the raise hand button at the bottom left. We will now take one main question and one follow-up question each time. The first question comes from Kenneth Fong from the Credit Suisse. Then press 6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, management. Thank you for the opportunity to ask question. My first question is about advertising recovery trend. With macro improving and our algorithm and ecosystem upgrade driving higher ROI, how should we think about the pace of ad recovery over the next few quarters? In particular, which are the key verticals that you see a stronger performance, that we are gaining share, and which verticals which is generally weaker? My follow-up question is on the global AI race and the ChatGPT product launched by our peers globally and domestically. Management just shared some competitive strength for Tencent. Would you mind share more about the opportunities, use cases, such as for AIGC, online gaming, cloud products, etc.? In particular, with high computing power GPU being the constraint, how should we think about the product priority, either on the 2B side or the 2C side, and how should we think about the pace of financial benefits over the next few years? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Kenneth. I'll take the first one on the advertising outlook and on specific advertiser categories. So in terms of the overall outlook, we believe that advertisers are generally cautiously optimistic on a China consumption recovery this year. In more detail, companies that sell low ticket price items are seeing a broad-based recovery already. For companies that sell higher ticket priced items, it varies category by category, but they're all aware that China consumers have built up substantial excess savings in the past 3 years. And so at some point, there'll be the opportunity to tap into those savings. There's also some factors that are benefiting Tencent in particular. We see there's great demand to advertise in the short form video format to consumers who previously weren't reachable in short form video format. And from that perspective, our video accounts are highly appealing because many of the viewers of video accounts are not viewers of Douyin or Kuaishou or other existing short-form video services. We see great desire among certain categories of advertisers, for example, luxury products, to advertise in a format where they actually own the relationship with the consumer as opposed to being intermediated. And so for those advertisers, the mini program inventory is very attractive. And then also, as we see the broader economy turning around, there are certain advertiser categories who are extremely price sensitive. And for those advertisers, our mobile ad network that has very low revenue per thousand impressions is a natural destination for spending. In terms of advertiser categories, then we mentioned in the prepared remarks that we see particularly robust contributions from e-commerce platforms, from fast-moving consumer goods, from games. And I think part of that is macro, part of that is more company specific. So for e-commerce, we see some big e-commerce companies who used to advertise less on us in the past have become much more active in recent months. For games, because of the popularity of mini games within Weixin, there's increased opportunities for app-based game companies to reach people who are already playing a different kind of game. And then for fast-moving consumer goods companies, they find the click-to-purchase opportunity within Weixin inventory highly effective and aligned with their needs. So that's on the advertising question.
Now, in terms of the ChatGPT and AI, I think in our prepared remarks, we did talk about our thinking, and I'll highlight a couple right now. The first one is we do believe that this is a growth multiplier for us, and the reason is because our businesses are actually primarily in the social and communication and gaming business, which means that it's primarily user to user, and it's involves very high quality content. And as a result, these are businesses which can be supplemented by these generative AI technologies and the foundation model technologies, but they're not necessarily that easily disrupted by such technology, not like the user to machine experiences like search. And as a result, the strategy that we'll be taking is that we'll definitely be investing a lot of resources in building our foundation models, because we feel that this is something which will add to each one of our business lines in the future. And at the same time, it can actually also help us to launch new businesses going forward and take our strength from user to user into the user to machine arena. And our strategy is that we will try to do it right rather than do it in a rush. We want to make sure that the foundation of the foundation models are actually built correctly and on solid footing. The first release, in our view, is actually one of the many iterations that we will be launching. So it's a long-term game, and it involves a very iterative process. We also believe that chatbot is one of the many applications that we'll be launching going forward. So it is a business opportunity that we can actually build over time. and not a business threat that we have to tackle immediately. And that actually allows us to be able to focus our resources, but at the same time build our capabilities and build our models in a sustainable way. And we do believe we have a lot of competitive capabilities to build it right. As I mentioned, we have use cases, we have data, we have a very strong cloud computing infrastructure, and we also have a long-standing history of building AI applications to supplement our existing businesses. In terms of the infrastructure, we do have enough and required amount of chips to actually create the model. That's not a problem. And more importantly, we felt we actually have a very strong cloud business and the relevant technologies to really arrange and make use of the chips in a scalable and high density way so that we can create very large clusters of chips that can really deliver the performance that's needed to train these very large models, especially when the models get more and more sophisticated over time after a few iterations. In terms of the commercial prospect, I think, as we have alluded in our prepared remarks, it's a growth multiplier. So that means it will improve our existing businesses along the line of improved monetization. Imagine advertising can be actually improved with the generative content, which is highly targeted to the users. That can be very, very effective in conversion. It can actually increase efficiency. Imagine a lot of our content platforms and content business can actually make use of these tools to generate content for both the creators as well as for ourselves on a much more cost-efficient basis, and the user experience can be much more engaging. And at the same time, I think, as we said, we look at new business opportunities. And for these new opportunities, I think, the business models will probably evolve over time, just like in the history of internet. You first of all create something that's useful, and over time you think about the right business model. But we felt this is actually a very exciting opportunity for us. As we said, we look at.
Thank you very much, Martin and James. Thank you.
And for these new opportunities, I think,
Next question is Alicia Yap from Citi.
You first of all create something that's
Hi,
useful,
can you hear me okay?
and over time you think about
Yes.
business model.
Okay, good evening, management. Thanks for taking my questions. Two questions. Number one, related to your cloud business. Can management share more details of whether the strategic shift of reducing the lower margins business are largely behind us? And is that fair to assume that we will see growth gradually normalizing with faster rebound of the business and higher margins in the second half of this year? And then second question, just a follow-up on the AI. Do we have any plans to incorporate this generative AI technology into Weixin and also the QQ app in the coming future? And how would the foundation model convert to the higher revenue growth opportunity? Thank you.
In terms of cloud, I think, you actually have answered your questions pretty well, right? I think, the optimization shift is largely over. It's a pretty painful process, but after the entire effort, I think, the business is actually in a much more sustainable and much higher quality state. And yes, we will see more with the business coming into the right shape. We will see normalizing growth. And now it's time for the business to push for higher growth. And after the strategic shift, I think we now have a business that has an organization that's much more focused, nimble, and efficient. We have a product mix that is focused on high margin, high value add, as well as self-developed and recurring revenue. And at the same time, I think the operational procedure of the business has been improved in that we're much more capable in managing the cost for the eyes part of the business, as well as delivering better services to our customers. So I think the quality of the overall business has improved, and we're now in the right mode for pursuing high growth, especially for the second half 2023. Now, in terms of the generative AI, it's definitely natural, right, for us to incorporate some of these technologies into our flagship products like Weixin and QQ, and we can actually improve the efficiency of the user experience. For example, we can actually allow mini program developers to develop mini programs at a much faster rate with these generative AIs. So that's in the category of content generation. And we can also improve customer service for our flagship products so that each one will have a customer service assistant behind it, right? These are all possible. And at the same time, if you think about on the front end, if there is a very good chatbot service that we develop, then we can easily incorporate it into Weixin and QQ so that it enjoys the large distribution and customer reach of these platforms. So there's a lot of possibilities going forward, and that's why we call it a growth multiplier for us. At the same time, if you think about on the front end,
Great, thank you.
If there is a very good chatbot service that we develop, then we can easily.
Next question comes from Robin Wu from Bernstein.
Enjoys the large distribution.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. If I may have my first question on live streaming e-commerce. I mean, if I look at some of your peers, this is typically quite an ops-heavy business in terms of having teams doing whether it's customer service, logistics, things like that. Tencent has historically not done ops-heavy businesses as much. Would love to hear your thoughts on, whether that's a new direction that the company plans to head in, what that implies in terms of headcount or kind of investment in that direction. And then another follow-up, if I may, on AIGC and so on. We've seen OpEx as a whole decline now for a couple of quarters. Would love to hear your thoughts on how that sort of interplays with some of the new investments, whether it's AIGC, whether it's overseas gaming. Are we at the point of peak cost cutting, or does management think there's more room to go in the coming quarters, given the costs associated with these large models? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. In terms of live streaming e-commerce, we do believe this is a good opportunity for video accounts to develop over time. But I actually emphasize the word over time. So our plan is actually to grow it on a consistent, measured, and high quality basis. So it is true that in e-commerce business, you actually need to have heavier live operations, and we do intend to put in a heavier live operation to support this. But at the same time, we emphasize one that it is actually profitable, right? So even if you put in the live operations, the cost is going to be small compared to the potential benefits. But more importantly, the way that we're doing it will be, I think, much more thoughtful, much more efficient in the sense that we will try to focus on the high quality merchants and high quality product categories, which means that the live ops associated with these will be actually less, because a lot of times the live ops is actually focused on solving problems, and when we actually focus on high quality, the problems will be fewer. We'll be much more focused on creating tools so that a lot of these live ops can be actually executed by tools. And as a matter of fact, the AIGC will be very helpful in that regard. And if we want to grow it in a very, very fast manner, then maybe you just have to load in a lot of people. But if we actually sort of stretch it over time, then we can actually build the tools to make our operations more efficient. And we'll also leverage on our existing infrastructure, such as mini programs, such as existing brands who are already selling on our mini programs to make sure that we know these merchants, and as a result, the amount of live operations will be actually less and more efficient. So that's sort of the way we are going to tackle the problem.
And Robin, I think your second question was around where we are in the cost management cycle, and specifically whether overseas game investments or AIGC investments will cause substantial upward pressure to our cost base. So, we believe we'll be structurally more disciplined and cost conscious going forward than we've been in the recent past. And we don't think that either of the factors you identified change that trajectory. In terms of the international games, then we've very clearly been investing and in fact acquiring studios through the slow period in the last 12 months, and those investments are paying off quite nicely. You can see that our international game business is now half the size of our China game business, and we've had a number of successful international game releases, both from bigger, better established studios such as Riot, Valorant, but also from small up-and-coming studios such as V Rising from Stunlock. So we'll continue investing in international games, but that's a business-as-usual investment. It's not a disruptive new investment from our perspective. On the AIGC, then, as you're probably aware, it is not the provision of AIGC itself that is costly. If you look at a service like Discord, that actually is already profitable from distributing AIGC service mid-journey for creating graphics. Rather, it's the decision to build the large language model that powers the AIGC that is capital intensive. And the capital is not small. Microsoft has stated that their large language model costs several $100 million to build out. However, the nature of the cost is very different from the nature of costs that China Internet was facing 1 to 3 years ago, meaning that 1 to 3 years ago, most of the cost-heavy projects that we and our peers in China Internet were engaged in were actually projects where the cost scaled with the number of users you had. So if you decided to get into community group buying, then the more users you had, the greater your absolute cost base was. Large language models are different. There's a fixed cost or a table stakes for being in the game, which is the capex that Microsoft referred to. But then that is the majority of the cost, at least in the near term, prior to generating revenue. So we're absolutely embarked on bearing that fixed cost. And if you compare that fixed cost with our revenue, you can see it's a sizable number, but it's not a number that has very dramatic consequences for our margins. And every other company that wants to build large language models, whether they're larger than us or smaller than us, will have a cost that's somewhat similar in absolute fixed terms. So this kind of fixed cost, this kind of cost, we think is a more desirable cost because it is fixed, as opposed to something like the subsidies, where the more users you have, the cost you bore, which naturally disadvantaged us as a company with most users. Thank you.
And also bear in mind that a lot of the cost is actually a hardware cost, which can be amortized over a few years rather than you're spending for the year.
As opposed to something like the subsidies.
Thank you.
Robin. Next question is Alex Yao from JP Morgan.
Thank you.
And also bear in mind that a lot of the cost is actually
Alex, your line is open.
Which can be amortized over a few years rather than you're spending for the year.
Thank you.
Maybe we will.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay?
Next question. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, management, for taking my question. I have a few follow-up on the prepared remark. The first one is regarding fintech. I think that this was a less of a discussion of future growth area in last year. probably because of the regulatory environment change. But I noticed that you guys start to talk about fintech as one of the key future growth drivers in this prepared remarks. So can you share with us your thoughts on fintech development strategy in a new regulatory environment? And second one is on video accounts monetization. Can you share with us a bit more feedback on the monetization progress so far, in addition to the quarterly revenue of 1 billion RMB? For example, what's the ad load? What's the advertiser feedback, and how do you think about the monetization pace in the coming quarters? Thank you. A bit more feedback on the monetization
In terms of our fintech strategy, right? I think the situation is that we have been through a process of regulatory scrutiny in which the authorities have taken a very good look at all our fintech businesses and provided a lot of guidance as to how the business should be adjusted in order to be both compliant with the regulations and regulatory direction, as well as complying with what the intention of the regulators are. Through that process, we've also explained very carefully the way we conduct our business, right? Which is actually compliant with regulation, which is very focused on risk management, which is very focused on value creation for the users, and also focused on working with a lot of licensed financial institutions. And through that process, I think we have adjusted our fintech businesses to be even more compliant with the regulatory direction. And at the same time, I think the regulators have actually got a better understanding of our fintech business as well as fintech strategy. And I think the top regulators have already made the remark that there's going to be a normalized regulation for fintech businesses going forward. And through that process, I think our fintech business actually continue to grow on a consistent basis. And that's points to the strength and the quality of the business itself. And going forward, we felt our fintech business will continue to expand alongside with the macroeconomic development of the economy, as it's very important provider of support to consumption and to merchants' activities. So that's number one. And number two, we felt the basic take rates of our fintech business will remain stable, but we would over time think about ways through which we can roll out value-added services to allow merchants to have better conversion rates, to give them tools so that they can manage their businesses more efficiently. And in those cases in which we can actually generate better value for the merchants, then we can actually share a little bit of the value creation, and that would provide additional monetization mechanism for us. And thirdly, in terms of financial products that tied in, that can be developed, such as wealth management, such as loans, such as insurance over the longer term, we felt that there's also opportunities if we can actually develop these businesses in a cautious way, in a compliant way, with a very high focus on risk management, and at the same time with more focus on working with the existing licensed financial institutions. So we feel that there's a good prospect for our fintech business going forward.
And in terms of the video accounts monetization, Alex, so the advertising load factor, it's a very light ad load, both compared to other Tencent properties and also even more so compared to the big incumbent short video services. The advertiser feedback is very positive, and I say that both from a qualitative perspective, but also quantitatively, that the revenue per thousand impressions that we achieve on the video accounts ads, following a substantial increase in inventory in recent months, is actually superior to the revenue per thousand impressions achieved by Weixin Moments, and substantially superior to the revenue per thousand impressions achieved by the two short-form video incumbents. And then in terms of the growth trajectory, if you compare it with Weixin Moments, Moments was more of a sort of step change model of expansion and then consolidation, and then expansion and then consolidation. Because with Moments, we fairly programmatically, periodically increase the maximum number of ads that a user could see from 1 to 2 to 3 and so forth. Today with the video accounts, it's a much more dynamic and therefore sort of progressive continual expansion. And one of the reasons we can do that now is because of the much more powerful machine learning infrastructure we have at the back end supporting our ad technology and our ad systems. So while the growth in video accounts in front end is very impressive, and you can see it simply from the added inventory, a big part of the turnaround in our advertising revenue is what we're doing at the back end with the machine learning infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We will take the next question from Ronald Huang from the Goldman Sachs.
Thank you, Pony, Martin, James, John, and Wendy. I want to ask one question on games. I think we haven't touched on that so far. And second on WeChat video accounts time spent. So for games with the approval mostly normalized, how does management see the outlook for domestic games this year, particularly this year of a reopening, but yet with a low base last year? And after the kind of strong January with the seasonality in January, Feb, how is the grossing trending for a cleaner month like this month, and especially for your legacy titles? And then my second question would be on video accounts time spent. So how is that time spent trending compared with previously? I think we've shared around the 30 minutes or so versus the other two players typically at a longer time spent. So on that, do we see time spent and ad potential kind of tied together, or we actually could have a higher return given more purpose-oriented and live stream sessions that could come? So would our ad scale gradually kind of reach the Moments ad revenue scale that we mentioned before? When should we expect a potential reaching of Moments ad scale for our video accounts? Thank you.
So for our domestic game business, then overall we're quite optimistic. We've begun the year in good shape, and that trajectory is so far very healthy. You asked specifically about the low base dynamic versus the reopening dynamic. Now, the reopening dynamic is something we've looked at a great deal because we're in the unusual position of operating very big, somewhat similar games in the Western world as well as in China and other geographies. And so we can actually look at how reopening plays out on games in those different geographies. And what we see is that the reason why in Western economies there has been a roughly 1-year hangover period for the game industry post-COVID is because in those Western economies, the majority of the population was working from home for a period of many months. And that process of most of the population working from home for multiple months did create a high engagement base and monetization base, which the Western game industry is only now emerging from. On the other hand, in China, there was no phenomenon of the majority of the population working for many months. There are individual cities where people worked from home for 2 weeks, or in some cases 2 months. But those were sporadic and scattered, and the impact has diminished because it was spread out over 3 years rather than concentrated over 1.5 years. So, at this point in time, we don't see a quote unquote reopening headwind for our game business, and I think it's possible that we won't see one, given the unusual nature of the COVID outbreaks, work from home behavior in China. Because it was spread out over 3 years rather than concentrated.
Now, in terms of video accounts, it is still true that the average time spent per user is actually much lower than the incumbents on short video. But the number actually has been growing consistently, and this is sort of part of the driver of why the total time spent on our video accounts has been growing quite rapidly, and now it's at 1.2 times of moments. And the driver of this increase in average time spent is as our recommendation algorithm continue to improve, and as the size of our creator community and the amount of high quality content continue to grow, then we have much more ability to make our users spend more time on the content. And in terms of the average time spent, of course, it reduces total time spent, and as a result, it reduces the total amount of advertising dollars. But I don't think the average time spent per person actually would necessarily reduce the monetization per unit time. As a matter of fact, if somebody actually spent 30 minutes on a platform versus if somebody spends 150 minutes on a platform, the first 30 minutes probably would carry higher value per unit time compared to the latter number of minutes. So we actually feel pretty comfortable that we have a good revenue generation opportunity here. From the amount of time that we right now have, the monetization is actually relatively light. And as we continue to grow the total amount of time, then the potential for more advertising dollars will actually continue to increase. A good revenue generation.
Sure. Thank you, James and Martin.
Here. From the amount of time that we right now have.
Question is Will Packer from XMBMP.
Continue to grow the total amount of time.
Hi, management. Many thanks for taking my questions. Firstly, since the last earnings call in November, we've had the 2 sessions and some other regulatory news flow. Could you update us on any developments in the domestic regulatory backdrop? Specifically, could you comment on the implications for video games, short-form video, and the financial services segment? And then, as a follow-up question, could you update us on your current capital allocation thinking? Are you considering further stake monetizations via distribution or sales during 2023? And on the other hand, how are you thinking about your third-party investment priorities? Many thanks.
Short-form video and the financial services segment. Okay, on the regulatory updates, we previously talked about regulatory direction is actually trending towards supporting healthy development of our industry and completing the ratification and also going forward carrying out normalized regulation. We believe this trend continues based on recent supportive remarks from top leaders. For example, the president in a recent CPPCC meeting remarked that the government supports healthy and high quality development of the private sector. He mentioned supporting platform companies to show competence in creating employment, driving consumption, and international competition. Premier also highlighted private sector will have a significant potential in the China economy. And the government's report also reiterated to practice normalized regulation and also facilitate the healthy development of the platform economy. So overall, the trend continues. And in terms of specifically on the different segments that you talk about, in the area of games, we can see the most tangible positive development as the game ban house are approved on a more regular basis. illustrating that the industry regulation is indeed normalizing. We have received 6 banhaos so far for the year of 2023, including imported banhao for merge mentioned this week. And then if you look at short video, I think the regulation is broadly stable, right? If there's one potential issue, it probably may be on the time spent per user is actually very high. But if you look at our platform, the time spent per person is actually way below industry standards. So that even is an issue, is probably not going to be that much of an issue for us. In terms of the financial services, we do believe that there is also a normalization trend. Having said that, right, I think we still would be going forward, continuing to place very high emphasis on compliance, on the responsibility as a platform, and also on the proactive communication with regulators. So that's the update on the regulatory side.
And then in terms of capital allocation, Will, so on the capital return front, we're very active. We'll be sending out the Meituan distribution in kind in the next 2 days. We announced today we'll be increasing our regular annual dividend by 50%. And previously, when we were in open trading window, we were buying back shares most days. And so we're very busy. I wouldn't say I'm personally busy mailing out Meituan checks, but collectively, as an organization, we're busy on the capital return front. In terms of investing capital in other companies, then looking domestically at China, we're actually quite optimistic given what we see on China consumption. We can't forecast how the market will value companies, but we can see what China consumers are doing, which is becoming more active. And we ourselves have therefore become more active in terms of making investments in small, early stage, privately held companies in interesting growth areas in China. Internationally, the environment's obviously extremely dynamic, and we're being very selective, but also seeking to be opportunistic. So that's on returning capital and on investing capital. Early stage, privately held companies.
Many thanks.
Interesting growth areas in China.
Internationally, the environment. Next question comes from John Choi from Daiwa.
Okay, thank you, management, for taking my question. I have a question on your international game opportunity. I know that I think on the prepared remarks, management did lay out a few things such as expansion of original IP, new titles from your studios, and bringing top PC consoles to mobile. But considering that, if you look at the global gaming market itself, is also growing at a much slower pace. Which drivers do you think will be important for our international game business? Can you kind of give us a priority of where the investments will go through, and what kind of growth that we should be expecting over the longer term period? And then just a quick follow up, as we could see from the recent more scrutiny from other social network platforms elsewhere on a geopolitical reason, do we see any risk on our gaming business as we continue to thrive internationally? Thank you.
So in terms of the international game opportunity, we don't think it's stuck in slow growth mode. We think that the last year has been a transitional period because of the hangover from the work from home phenomenon that I discussed earlier. But we're actually structurally very positive about the game business globally, including internationally. And there's obviously been a number of games, whether it's Call of Duty this year or Elden Ring or Harry Potter, that have been phenomenally successful, both in the traditional premium game model as well as increasingly in the game as a service model. So our market share of the international game market is still only in the mid-single-digit percentage, but we think that we have certain structural competitive advantages that we can bring to bear, including the sort of development capabilities from China, including the fact that we're at the forefront of trends such as multi-platformization, such as shifting to game as a service rather than premium game model. And therefore, both the China game industry in general and then Tencent within that are well positioned to increase their market share of the global and the international game industry over time. And our focus is around those areas. It's around developing great games, particularly games that have long life, and those could be more player versus player games that are similar to physical sports, or they could be more content-driven player versus environment games that are more in the nature of storytelling. But we're building up our capabilities in both kinds of games. And then in operating those games effectively, and operating games in the games as a service era, it involves much more continual hands-on support than publishing games in the premium game era. But we're investing to be good at both developing and operating good games, and if we do that, we think we can continue to creep up our market share in this very big $150 billion plus international game market. On the geopolitical front, then everything faces some degree of geopolitical risk. I think that the risks faced by the game industry are dissimilar to the risks faced by social platforms that you alluded to, for a few reasons. One is that games generally, you're not seeking to collect data on individual users and then optimize that user's experience based on very sort of targeted data. You're interested in collecting scale data on a large number of anonymized users, but you're not following the behaviors of individual actors. And in addition, with media platforms, that there's concern around the content that's distributed, particularly the news content that's distributed to users. With games, you don't have news content that's distributed to users. People don't go into a video game if they want to watch CNN. So while I wouldn't say that games are absent from geopolitical risk, I think the nature of concerns around games is different from the nature of the concerns around media platforms or social platforms. With games, you don't have news content that's distributed to users.
Next question comes from James Cotwell from Atlantic.
So while I wouldn't say that games
James, your line is open.
Geopolitical risk, I think the nature of
Thank you very much, management. Thank you very much for taking my question. I actually wanted to go back to Alex's question on the fintech business and try and get a little bit more detail, if I may. Two parts. Just first of all, looking nearer term, would you say the double-digit quarter-to-date growth you described in the release represents a fully recovered growth rate? And if not, what kind of level should we expect from that business once it is fully recovered? Or maybe if there's any color on what you've been seeing March in the month of March. And then secondly, looking a little bit longer term, you detail in the release some of the other initiatives you're investing in within the fintech area to augment growth. So I was wondering if there's any kind of framework you could give us as to how much of fintech's growth in the next couple of years will come from volume, how much might come from increasing take rate, and how much will come from the value-added offerings you described.
Well, in terms of the growth rate in the fourth quarter, the number is actually against the number we quoted is actually against January and February, which is, if you think about 2022, those 2 months were actually relatively normal periods within the COVID period. And then starting from March, April, those are sort of the more disruptive times. So it's actually tougher comparison from a number perspective for January and February, and then easier comparison when you step into March and April. So that's sort of the nature of comparison. And I would say in general, when our payment business is actually sort of as ubiquitous as it is, then it grows pretty much with consumption. And so I would say double digits is actually pretty good growth rates. Now, in terms of the areas that drivers growth, I think I've actually explained this quite a bit already, which is Now our volume would grow, but that would be alongside with the consumption. And in terms of tick rates, I don't think we want to increase basic tick rate because we felt if there's any additional gain that we want to make, then we should be making it from value creation. So we'll be very focused on saying, oh, if we actually serving these merchants and helping these merchants to cover the customers, how can we actually help the merchants to make their transactions easier, right? For example, if they are actually making transactions over our, then there are ways through which we can actually make the conversion better. There are ways through which we can actually help them to increase their ticket size. And when we actually do these things, which are value added to the merchants, then I think it's fair for us to charge a certain monetization for the value creation, a part of the value creation that we are making for them. And in terms of additional the drivers of growth, it will be coming from the financial products, right? When we are offering our loan products, and when we are offering wealth management products, and when over time we offer insurance products that would help our users and our merchants to be served better. And when we offer these products, which are in conjunction with licensed financial institutions, which is completely compliant with the existing regulatory framework, then we actually can generate more revenue from different products. And so that's the way we think about our fintech business. That would help our users and our merchants to.
James, we will take the last question from Thomas Chong from Jefferies.
In conjunction with licensed.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, management, for taking my questions. I have a question regarding on the margin side. Given that on the top line, we have a lot of opportunities ahead. On the OpEx side, we are seeing the sales and marketing expenses made a very good job on a sequential basis. So just want to get some color with regard to the margin outlook in 2023, and whether the OpEx in Q4 can be used as a basis of a benchmark going forward. And my second question is really about the consumer behavior post the pandemic. Any color that would affect our business or incremental to our business segments can be shared would be grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the margin, while we don't provide guidance, I would like to share with you some bits and pieces. As you understand, approximately half of our revenue have closely contribute and benefit from China economy activity. And our business has stayed resilient when facing macro challenges, and we are well positioned to benefit from the economy. On a holistic basis, we have been seeing positive signs in January and February for games, payment, and advertising upon reopening. So, we can assume that, for some of our services, on a margin basis, there's some room for improvement. And of course, when you look at, some of our segments, just like online advertising, there might be some seasonal fluctuation, and margin trends, although should show positive, on a year-on-year basis in, 2023, due to industry recovery and growing contribution for higher margin video accounts in feed ads. And in terms of the expenses, I think Martin and James have covered a little bit, but I'll just elaborate a little bit more. Promotion and advertising, inside the selling and marketing has already increased by 40% year on year for the whole 2022. And I would say that this has already been pushed to a very low base. So we expect that expenses may notch up with new business opportunities, for example, new games, but we are very focused on ROI, as opposed to, in the past. So it will be increased in a more disciplined way. And for R&D, it increased by 18%, in year on year in 2022. And we will continue to invest in strategic areas just like games and AI. we expect R&D to increase, but the growth rate would be more moderate. Say, for instance, as Martin has explained earlier, even for AI investments, a lot of the investment is in form of service, which is the cost of which will be amortized over a period of 4 years, and so the impact is not that material. And going to the another big item, which is the staff cost, it grew 16% year on year, while the headcount dropped by 4%, despite there were a few thousand additional headcounts from graduates and another 2,000 from newly acquired subsidiaries. We expect headcount to grow, but remain disciplined and at a measured pace in 2023.
Great. So in terms of the consumer behavior, we have a couple of lenses, including Tenpay activity, including mini program transactional activity, and what we see is generally quite positive. There's obviously some nuance, and so as I mentioned earlier, low ticket price items are selling better. Certain high ticket price items like cars, not, but certain other high ticket price items also selling better. In terms of offline versus online, then there's a sharper, both are growing, but there's a more pronounced turnaround for offline because offline was more impacted last year, particularly in early in the second quarter last year and late in the fourth quarter last year. So at the margin, the pickup is more pronounced for offline than online. But overall, a broad-based consumption recovery that we're seeing flowing through to us in terms of payment volumes and revenues, in terms of our mini program activity and revenues, in terms of our advertising activity and revenues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the questions. We are now ending the webinar. If you wish to check out press release and other financial information, please visit the IR section of our company website at www.tencent.com. The replay of this webinar will also be available soon. Thank you and see you next quarter.